In today's video, I'm talking about the truth about parasites in your gut and in your blood. And the unfortunate truth is they're way more common than most people think. In fact, some practitioners believe that almost every single person that comes in to see them actually has parasites. I don't believe that to a degree, right? I don't believe that every single individual has a high parasite load. I think everybody has some degree of parasites, but it's more common than most people believe to have a higher parasite load, even in a first world country like the United States of America. A lot of people think it's only, parasite infections are really common in third world countries where they have poor sanitation, but not common in first world countries. But that's not actually true. They're a lot more common than most people think. We're gonna break down the truth about parasites, and I'm also gonna go through the best parasite killing protocol in this video. So to start, parasites are really lumped into two main categories. One is amoeba and protozoa, which are single cell organisms, and they have two phases. They have a trophocyte phase, which is their active phase, and they have a cyst phase where they form a cyst, and that's kind of like a dormant phase, and the cyst actually protects them from antimicrobials and from medications and different things that would kill them naturally. And so some examples of protozoa that are pretty common are things like Blastocystis hominis, Enteromoeba histolytica, Cryptosporidium giardia. You may have heard of some of these. And these are real pathogenic microbes when they increase in our system beyond a certain threshold. So, if your threshold level for how much your body can handle is here, and you're exposed to giardia, and you get about this amount, right? Let's say you go from baseline to there, you're not gonna have major symptoms. And your body may be able to deal with that naturally. In fact, most people, their immune systems can adapt and get rid of that, okay? But if your exposure to that giardia goes up beyond that threshold, now you start to have symptoms. Now your body becomes overwhelmed with stress from that microbe. Or if let's say your threshold goes down because you didn't sleep well, you were stressed out, you were exposed to a lot of toxins, you were eating really bad foods. Now your normal threshold for what your body can handle goes down. Now you're exposed to giardia, and now it overwhelms your system, and now you have symptoms, and it becomes a vicious cycle because the giardia keeps on reproducing. Your immune system can't tag it and eliminate it, and now it starts to build up in your system, causing more and more problems. Some of the most common symptoms associated with parasite infections are going to be, of course, digestive symptoms, acid reflux, indigestion, constipation, bloating, diarrhea, stools that float oftentimes can be an issue. Abdominal pain can be an issue. Also skin issues, skin rashes, hives, very commonly associated with parasite infections. Headaches, migraines are really common, joint pain in general. Also teeth grinding, that's a really common one. People that grind their teeth, especially at night, very commonly associated with parasites. If you wake up, let's say between 1 and 3 a.m. on a continual basis at night, that's often associated with parasites, especially if you notice it more commonly around the full moon. Around the full moon, parasites are more active. And we have to understand that. There's more light in the sky when the full moon comes out. And because of that, it doesn't allow serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter, to convert. Serotonin normally converts into melatonin, which is our sleep hormone. The more light in the sky because of the full moon causes a higher amount of serotonin to be in the bloodstream, less melatonin, and that serotonin is a signal. The more serotonin in our bloodstream, that's a signal to the parasites that they can increase their activity. So a lot of those parasites go from cyst stage to trophocyte stage, right? And that causes more problems. Now, protozoa and amoeba are big factors. There's also what we call helminths. Helminths are your worms. And so there's all different types of worms. Nematodes, which are roundworms. You get cestodes, which are tapeworms, commonly found in things like pork, for example. Eating undercooked pork can give you tapeworm infections. Trematodes, which are flatworms, and liver flukes. These are a lot more common than most people believe. A lot of people have some sort of worm or a number of worms in their intestinal system, and those worms will just eat up nutrients in your body. And so some of the main risk factors for getting a parasite infection, one is antibiotic use, because antibiotics will kill off healthy microbes in your gut. Those healthy microbes produce postbiotics. They eat the food that we consume, produce postbiotics that strengthen the intestinal lining, strengthen the gut mucosa, the immunoglobulins in the gut mucosa, and protect the gut lining and protect the overall environment in the gut. When those bacteria die down, now we have a weaker immune response in our gut, and that allows a lot of these parasites to grow, right, and to replicate and take control. Number two, I mentioned this already, poor sleep and stress. That hampers our natural gut-mediated immune system and allows for parasites to take hold, right, and to overgrow and over-replicate. Bad diet and lifestyle. So if we're going to bed too late, if we're drinking a lot of alcohol, smoking, if we are stressed out, if we're eating foods that are, ultra-processed foods, high-sugar foods, eating late at night, a lot of these lifestyle factors increase our risk. Number four, very commonly, low stomach acid. When we consume food, that food is going to have microbes on it, even if it was just cooked, okay? Obviously, the more you cook it, the less microbes, or the more fresh you consume it, like freshly cooked, the less microbes are going to be on it. The more it's exposed to air after it's cooked, the more microbes are going to be on it. But normally, our stomach acid should be able to handle that. If we have real strong acidic stomach acid, it's going to sterilize the food that comes in. But if we're under stress, if we're eating bad foods, if we have certain nutrient deficiencies like zinc deficiency, for example, then we're not going to be able to produce the stomach acid that we need, and we're not going to be able to sterilize that food effectively, and therefore parasites and other microbes, bad bacteria and different things like that, are going to get into our small intestine in a higher proportion, much higher levels than if we had good, adequate stomach acid. So really important that we have good stomach acid production. And then number five is trauma. Of course, any sort of physical trauma, but also emotional trauma. That's a major stressor that's going to affect our ability to produce stomach acid, and it's going to affect our gut microbiome and our immune system in our gut. And then exposure to toxins, pesticides, herbicides, mycotoxins. Maybe you're living in a moldy home that's off-gassing mycotoxins. Maybe you just got a new couch and it's off-gassing formaldehyde. That's going to hamper your immune system and make you more susceptible to a parasite infection. So these are the major risk factors. There's other ones they talk about, like pet exposure, like being exposed to pets, but I don't think that's actually that big of a factor, because I think if you have a good healthy gut microbiome, good healthy stomach acid, it actually strengthens. It's like a hormetic stress. Like it's a stressor on the body being exposed to the different microbes that are on your dog. However, if your body's strong as it is, then you should be able to handle that, and it actually makes you stronger and more stress resilient. A lot of times people that have regular pets have lower rates of asthma and allergies because their immune system is more balanced and strong because of the exposure to the pet. So it can be having a pet, having your dog slobber all over you or whatever after it just licked its butt can certainly be a risk factor for developing parasites. But I don't think it's as big a risk factor as these other ones right here. They also say, traveling to a third world country certainly could be a risk factor, especially if you're drinking water that is contaminated. Certainly, that could be a factor, right? Or swimming in, a sewage tank would obviously be a risk factor. But I think these are going to be the big things right here. Keeping your gut microbiome, your digestive juices functioning well, keeping your overall toxic load under control. I think those are the most important things to really focus on. Okay, what are some labs that you can look at? Well, obviously you can get a stool analysis. There's a good one we have called the GI map, which will actually look at all of these parasites in your stool, right, in your poop. Now, there's a lot of false negatives with that. So certainly we'll see them from time to time, but I also see that on blood work and symptoms and on symptom questionnaires that a lot of individuals are showing a lot of signs of parasites, and it's not showing up in the stool. So a stool test is good, but you know what? A lot of times it's going to show a false negative where there's really parasites, but it's not actually showing up in the stool at the time of the test. So there are also some other labs, and these aren't always the case, but a lot of times I'll look at labs. I'll see white blood cells, right? Your immune cells, either very high or low, right? Very high, above 8, means you're fighting off some sort of infection, okay? If it's very low, it means you've had an infection or a high toxic load and typically an infectious burden for a long time. And now your body's not able to produce enough white blood cells because in a sense, its white blood cell producing mechanism has been depleted. And so it's producing less of these white blood cells. So that's something I'll look at. I like to see the white blood cells between 5 and 8. So if it's like 3, that's a sign chronic infection taking place in the body. If it's up above 8, 10, 12, usually some sort of acute stressor, right? Acute infection. Elevated eosinophils. Eosinophils are a type of immune cell that gets triggered, and it's very much associated with going after kind of larger parasites, right? And so when eosinophils are elevated, I think parasite infection, and oftentimes I think possibly helminths. Now, it can also be elevated due to, for example, if you have an allergic reaction to something, or if you have allergies to pollen and you're exposed to pollen. So it's not 100%. Sometimes it's other factors, but very commonly associated high eosinophils with either protozoa, amoeba, or oftentimes with the helminth exposure. So that's another thing I look at. Elevated liver enzymes. A lot of these parasites get into the liver, like liver flukes, and they cause damage and inflammation in the liver. And so oftentimes we'll see ALT, AST, alkaline phosphatase, GGT, these liver enzymes elevated because of the damage that's taking place to the liver. We also may see elevated inflammatory markers like high sensitivity C-reactive protein. Oftentimes that'll be elevated. Sometimes the blood, the actual blood will be thicker because of the inflammatory activity that's taking place. So we'll see elevated ESR, erythrocyte sedimentation rates, and a lot of times we'll see anemic states. Certain types of parasites, particularly these helminths, these large multicellular worms, will take a lot of the iron out of the system and can increase your risk of an iron deficiency anemia. Now, on the opposite side of that, like before you get to the iron deficiency, sometimes we'll see high ferritin. Ferritin is a storage form of iron, and the body will hold the iron in a storage form. Oftentimes, it will sequester it there to try to keep it away from the parasite, because the parasite, while it likes the iron, it's important for its growth patterns. And so it will stay in the ferritin, and we'll see high serum ferritin, but lower iron levels oftentimes. And so that can be an indication also of parasites. So a lot of really good factors there that we're looking at when it comes to the blood labs. Now, here's what we do. Here's our protocol for getting rid of the parasites. Obviously, following good, healthy diet and lifestyle practices, making sure we're really trying to prioritize good sleep, keeping stress under control, good, healthy nutrition principles like I teach, opening up all the drainage pathways, doing things like castor oil packs, over your liver to help open up, dilate the liver can be really helpful, making sure you're hydrating well, dry brushing your skin to open your lymphatics, infrared sauna, all these things can be super helpful, right? And you want to open up all your drainage pathways. You want to make sure you're moving your bowels. If you have constipation, you don't want to do any sort of parasite killing until you get your bowels moving regularly. So you can take high dose magnesium. We have a couple products. One is Oxy Powder, another is Bowel Mover. Bowel Mover uses herbs. Oxy Powder uses oxygenated magnesium to help really move the bowels, right? And get things moving through the bowels. That's so important. And we can't get into any sort of parasite killing activity until we have regular, at least 1 to 2 good bowel movements every single day. So that's the first thing, getting the bowels moving, really trying to open up and improve our respiration, nose breathing, not mouth breathing as much as possible, nasal breathing. Doing deep breathing practices can be really helpful. So we want to be able to excrete more toxins through our breath, through urination, so good hydration, super key. Through perspiration, that's where something like infrared sauna can be really helpful. And then through defecation, right? So that's why we want to move our bowels. Then what we do is, around the full moon, I mentioned how when the full moon comes out, like starting about a week before the full moon, we have more light in the nighttime sky, and it's a trigger on our physiology where we don't produce as much melatonin. So we have serotonin in our system. Serotonin normally converts into melatonin. When there's less conversion because we're exposed to this light at night, Now we have elevated serotonin, a little bit less melatonin, and that serotonin triggers the parasite activity. So this is when the parasites are out of the cyst or the dormant stage and in the trophocyte stage. So we hit it. We use 3 products. One is called Para-1. This is called the gut scrubber. It's an herb called Mimosa pudica, which makes a gelatinous, sticky substance in the gut. And that will help grab these worms. It will grab some of those protozoa and amoeba and just kind of pull them through the system. Again, making sure we're moving our bowels because that's how we're going to eliminate these. Super important. So we use the Para-1. We use the Para-2, right? And there's different protocols. We have like a 7-day protocol, a 3-day protocol, right? You can check out the link in the show notes, which will actually go through the protocol and how it works. The Para-2 is a bunch of different herbs, things like clove, vidanga, neem, right? There's a bunch of different herbs in there, amla, that strengthen the immune system. Some of them are extremely antimicrobial, particularly killing off eggs, parasitic eggs, right? So not only killing the parasite, but also killing the eggs as well. So we're sweeping the gut. We're also using different herbals to help improve the immune function of the gut and to help kill off eggs and to kill these really small protozoa and amoeba. The clove is really powerful for that. The neem is really good for that. And that's what we have in the Para-2. So protozoa egg killer. And then we use a binder, okay? And there's a number of good ones. We have a good one called GI Detox, but for the parasites, what we found is that the Biotoxin binder tends to work the best. It's a great binder for pulling endotoxins that are released from these parasites, helping grab them and pull them out of the system. It contains humic acid and fulvic acid, which actually helps strengthen cellular activity. There's also things like broccoli sprout in there, which help increase our ability to buffer oxidative stress. So it helps with cellular regeneration, protecting all the cells, while also pulling out endotoxins, mycotoxins, all different toxins that are associated with the killing process of these parasites and other toxins that may have built up in our GI system or in our blood. It's going to help pull those things out of the system. And so we have a specific protocol utilizing the full moon for getting the best benefit when the parasites are most active to go through and to kill them. And so that's really how we go about this. So ultimately, the truth about parasites is a lot more common than most people think. Many of you guys that are listening to this are actually dealing with parasite infections that are driving inflammation throughout your body, causing a whole lot of unwanted symptoms. But if you follow the right practices, you can eliminate these or at least get them way below your threshold, right? To where they are not causing problems in your body and you've got them under control and really be able to get your life and your health back. So with that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Please share it with anybody that you know and that you care about, and we'll see you guys in a future video training. Be blessed.